What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Simply Walk the Talk. I am your host, Joshua J. Holland. And today we've got a powerful duo. We've got some young gunners on the show. We've got two gentlemen that are joining us on the show by the names of Zack Schreier and Vincent Gudenus. Zack Schreier is a serial entrepreneur who appeared on Shark Tank for his first company, Quevos. As an athlete, philosopher, and type 1 diabetic, Zack is obsessed with living a lifestyle that supports health and performance holistically. Vincent Gudenus grew up with a global lifestyle living in Europe, Asia, and North America. Through his travels, Vincent became aware of the mismatch between our ancestral eating patterns and modern food cultures. The duo founded Lifestacks to develop products that support a virtuous cycle between daily performance and long term health.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Gentlemen, so we've got both of you sitting together at the mic and at the camera, and I want to welcome you to the show. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. We're excited to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first voice you heard was Mr. Zack Schreier, and the second one was Vincent Gudenus. And I promise not to say those last names anymore throughout the show because they're hard enough. But where are you guys calling in from?
We are calling in from Chicago, Illinois. This is where I grew up, and actually, Vincent grew up elsewhere. I'll let him tell you about that.
Yeah.
Yep. Originally from Austria, but spending a good amount of time in the U.S. also, and excited to be here with Zach in Chicago now.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was prepping for the show and I was reading through the bios and kind of checking out you guys' website, I thought it was really cool because, first off, I couldn't help but notice that you guys look very young. And then when we were talking about, just kind of prepping for the show, I asked you how old you guys are, and you both are in your early 20s. And I think that's really cool because I've always imagined what it would be like if I was like when I was in my early 20s, if I would be able to kind of start a business with a good friend of mine, right? And you guys became quick friends because you went to school together at Williams College, and then you kind of noticed that you had a lot of things in common, and it was just kind of like one moment to the next, to the next, and the next, and you guys, I guess, decided to create something together, and here we are. So that creation is called Lifestacks, right? And Gordon, I know is going to have the website up and is going to show that. But what I want to do is just kind of lay out the groundwork for how you guys came to building this and kind of your background. Let's start there.
For sure. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, Vincent and I became fast friends at Williams College, and we shared many passions. We were on a camping trip together and started talking about politics right off the bat, and then free will, and then determinism, and then cosmology and the future of humanity. So, pretty excited young kids, and we immediately became friends. We also shared a passion for, let's say, mind-altering substances of different sorts. But we discovered pretty early that we wanted to find solutions that would help us to perform better and live healthier. And some of the mind-altering stuff that you might get into as a college kid, it's fun and it's interesting and maybe even insightful, but not necessarily the best for long-term health. So we wanted to take matters into our own hands and develop stuff that really helped us perform each day and for the long run.
Right. Yeah. So we definitely can talk about these mind-altering substances because I am a man that is very curious and has done a lot of research in the world of plant medicine, and that can, I think it all boils down to set and setting. I'm sure you guys understand that, right? And so what you do with it will elicit the kind of response you get out of it, right? And so we can make a parallel to that with, say, supplements and vitamins and minerals and food, right? So I noticed that, Zach, you are type 1 diabetic. um, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how was that growing up, learning that you were type 1 diabetic, and what were some of the hurdles you crossed in dealing with that?
Sure. Yeah. I was diagnosed in sixth grade, so I was 11 years old. And basically, type 1 requires you to play the role that your pancreas was previously playing in regulating glucose levels at all times. So glucose is like very highly variable. If you were to basically, if you were to have 25 Skittles, your pancreas would release the right amount of insulin, and then your sugar would stay pretty flat. But if I were to have 25 Skittles, my sugar would double. And so it's basically up to me to do the amount of insulin that's required to take all that extra sugar that I might have and basically transport it to the cells. It's a constant balancing act. It really is pretty relentless. Even at night, sometimes there's things that must be managed. And so, yeah, as a sixth grader, that was a lot to kind of be thrust into. Really had no choice at all. But what I would say is that it started me down this health journey, getting really focused on the way that different things that I would do and eat would impact long-term health and performance. And so, of course, I would take the cure immediately, but I'm somewhat grateful that I was put in this kind of space by necessity.
Yeah. The reason why I think it's relevant we even bring that up is one, because it's important about your background and kind of what led you into doing what you're doing. But also, we just recently had a guest on the show by the name of Catherine, I believe. Yeah, Catherine, from the company NutriSense. And they do a CGM, continuous glucose monitoring. And I've done that a handful of times. We've actually had two different people now on the show from NutriSense, and we talked all about that. Have you used a CGM? Has that been helpful for you?
Yeah, certainly. So now for type 1 diabetics, CGM is kind of the first like technological intervention that's recommended. It basically gives you a constant view into your sugar. And I used to have to prick my finger 10 to 15 times a day just to get this sort of snapshot view of where I was. But with the CGM, I get a reading every 5 minutes. So it's like more information and less hassle. Definitely been a game changer for me.
Amazing, amazing. And Vincent, let's chat about you, and we can obviously come back to some of the more relevant things about your background too, Zach. But Vincent, so you grew up in Austria, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Originally from Austria, my family is still there for the most part. Grew up in a small town close to the mountains. But then in my teenage years, went out into the world basically. I lived in Asia for a couple of years and then came to the US for college, where I met Zach. And right now I'm actually living a fairly sort of digital nomad type lifestyle. So I split my time between Europe and the Americas, working on the company. And a lot of those travels have really informed my business interest also. And I guess we can get more into that.
So essentially, what you're saying is you're couch surfing.
Yeah, definitely relying on the generosity of friends and family for housing every once in a while. But Airbnbs are a good option too.
I love it. Yeah, again, it's like I love that this younger generation, like you guys, are coming up and doing more of these things. Not only being more conscious about health and wellness, but also starting companies, being entrepreneurs. It's like um, I think it's now more. It's okay to hear about people not going to school, or starting companies like right out of school, things like that. And that's essentially what you guys have done. So let's kind of move into that, because I think it's important to lay this groundwork that you guys have your own sort of challenges growing up, and then that's led to this. Some people want to hear, oh, you have a business degree, or you've got a certification in nutrition and things like that in order to run a company, but that doesn't always have to be the case. But like, when did you guys decide we're going to make a company out of this? Because what you're doing is great.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, it was my Vincent's junior year, and I was actually taking a gap year at that point to work on a different company. And as we mentioned, we were good friends those first 2 years of college, and we stayed in touch. And we were dabbling in supplements, some of the traditional stuff. NewPept was kind of an early thing that featured in our experimentation, for example. But both of us are performance oriented. We really want to feel good and do well at the things we're doing. We want extra capacity, extra focus. An athletic boost, for example. And so we were sort of comparing notes on different things that we were looking up, getting into, different pre-made stacks that we were researching and trying. And basically at that point, we decided that we wanted to do something ourselves. We really wanted to make a stack that we felt was holistically good. No fairy dusting, meaning like very small amounts of ingredients just for marketing reasons. We wanted to like have a bunch of great supplements that supported our performance. So we got moving on that. We did like a shit ton of research. Examine.com was a friend, as are like reviews and all these other supplement companies out there that have already started pioneering these different stacks. And so first we created the capsule product. So, basically 11 of our favorite synergistic ingredients together in the same capsule. And that supported daily performance and long-term health, mostly focused on cognition. So like feeling sharp, essentially. And what we heard from customers was, first thing, what the hell is this? This capsule here. Why would I want to take another pill? And the second thing was, after they tried it, I love this. I love taking it with coffee, especially. And so that kind of thinking, like, coffee is already this nootropic occasion, this energizing occasion for most Americans. And we thought, why don't we add these supplements to coffee in a delicious way, something that really enhances that whole occasion, and basically address some of the drawbacks like the crash, and enhance some of the benefits like the energy and the focus. And so our first product that you're looking at there on the website and that I'm holding up here is an Add Coffee product. It's fasting friendly. It's infused with nootropics that synergize with the caffeine and deliver all the energy. And basically the net effect is that people love taking it and they feel great when they have it.
I love this. So what was that capsule? What was that capsule? Well, one, what was it? And then two, I mean, I know you mentioned there was like 11 different ingredients, but is that a part of one of the first products on your site, or did you just quickly bypass that and go straight to the add to coffee product?
Yeah, we had 1,000 units of that product, and we sold those through our website way back in the day. So this was now 2019 and 2020, and basically that was called Flow by Lifestacks supplements, and included ingredients like acetyl L-carnitine, citicoline, ginseng, rhodiola, theanine, coenzyme Q10, alpha-lipoic acid, Celastris paniculata, PQQ, NADH. So it was a really great stack. And I know you're familiar with these mitochondrial agents, things that support basically energy metabolism all the way down in the mitochondria. And so we were including ingredients that supported those pathways as well. So it was kind of this like, you get this immediate energy from the citicoline and the adaptogens, but then you also have this long-term health effect that's coming from those mitochondrial agents. And actually, in some cases, the right mitochondrial stack is something you can actually feel. It's like it's energizing enough in this really healthy and fundamental way that you get an immediate benefit. So that was Flow, and people love that with coffee. But of course, we realized pretty quickly the format was totally uninteresting. Who wants to take a pill, basically?
Well, what's funny about that is that, in today's age, most people are looking for a magic pill, right? And so like my curiosity goes, well, did you guys decide that this add to coffee supplement was better and you just did away with Flow, or do you still carry it?
We sold out of it, and
Mhm.
actually before we sold out, we were already working on developing this Add to Coffee product, and so it was just
Okay.
natural for us to move on. But what I would say is Flow lives on in spirit in the formulation. So we use that same core of citicoline, ginseng, and rhodiola for basically daily energy and cognition. Um, and so actually the same doses, because it was so well received, basically with pretty widespread benefits and no side effects. So we made that the cornerstone of our new product.
I love that. Um, so what would you say, like, how would you identify your roles, like both of you? Like, what are your roles within Lifestacks? How does that look?
Yeah, I think we you probably hear this from a lot of entrepreneurs that are in the early stages, which is we have to wear all the hats. So anything that either of us are doing, the other knows about, and probably there's been a lot of discussion beforehand about how we're going to handle that. And so we're almost like one person with 48 hours in the day, I'd say.
Well said. Well said. So, I mean, are you guys like, because I envision starting a company, right? And I've started multiple companies, and some still exist and some don't. I'm sure, as you know, as an entrepreneur. But I love to paint this picture of like what is actually happening on a day-to-day basis. Like, are you guys, like, is one person literally in the laboratory like mixing ingredients, or are you guys completely hands off and just mostly coming up with the research and the studies? Like, how does that look?
Yeah. So there is some distinction in roles. So I'm more on the product side. That's handling the manufacturing side of things, and also dealing with nutritionists and formulators, and also doing a lot of the benchtop R&D myself. That's sort of my area that is mostly my own. Vincent really deals with a lot of our like third parties, basically, besides the manufacturer. So designers that we're working with, freelancers, that's a lot of his area.
Yeah, I think
Beautiful.
we're still in a fairly early stage of the company where a lot of things happen. You know, there's not that much bustling going on. There's like things happening one step at a time, and so it helps to have these 48 hours in a day. But I think we're hoping to get to a stage where a lot of things are going to be happening concurrently and bustling.
So I think it was you, were both of you on Shark Tank, or was it just you, Zach?
It was me for my first real company called Quevos. So we made chips from egg whites, also inspired by my diabetes. And that company actually got a lot of like sort of public interest because this was 2018 and keto was kind of taking off, and people love egg whites and thought it was really interesting to do a snack made from egg whites. Apologies, these are my dogs in the background.
Yeah,
Sometimes they go crazy.
they're making an appearance. What's up, pups?
I wonder if I should go quiet them down. Well, all right. I guess we'll have to deal with it. So yeah, basically, that company a few years in was at a stage when Shark Tank was interested in having us on the show. Uh,
Yeah, maybe this is probably a good time for a Pomodoro break, because I'm sure you're gonna have to get up to do it. But I do want to hear about this Shark Tank thing. And in fact, Gordon, do you think maybe we can find is that clip available of you online, Zach, with the Shark Tank?
yeah, I'm sure there's a trailer that shows us for free. Otherwise, it's like $2 on YouTube to buy our episode.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Okay. All right. Well, and now the
Gotta
dogs
find it.
quieted down.
Let's see.
The dogs are like, "Oh, wait, you about to come and shut us up? We're gonna be quiet." Um, yeah, I mean, that's very interesting, because I did notice that, it's made out of egg whites, and of course, we can always talk about that. And I don't want to divert too far away from Lifestacks, which is what you guys are doing now. But it is fascinating, because I used to watch that show religiously, and I learned a lot in terms of being an entrepreneur because of all the questions that would be asked. And there was a whole bunch. You could just see the difference between someone who's really passionate about something, and they almost won't let anyone tell them that they're wrong. And so I'm always curious, like, how people deal with being on that show. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah, for sure. I totally hear what you're saying about some people that are not willing to be wrong. It always
right.
surprises me that people have that much kind of confidence and even ability to talk to the sharks like that with so much conviction. When I was out there, it was like we stayed buttoned up. We tried to stay really kind of humble and kind of just to the point. Keep it very factual. And our orientation was when a shark went out or gave us a reason they weren't interested, we would thank them and move on. Basically, it's about the sharks that are left, to make a deal with, not the ones who are walking away. So it's not worth getting into one of these screaming matches. That just ends in embarrassment usually.
Right, right, exactly. And I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine once you establish some kind of connection with them, I would imagine that it should or could cross over into what you're doing now. Is that true?
Oh, that's a good question. Most of the relationship that I have with the shark that we made a deal with, Daniel Levetsky, is through Quevos. He's aware that I've been working on this project with Vincent, and certainly he'll be eager to follow along. Maybe in the future there's an investment, but we haven't propositioned him yet for that.
Ah, that's cool. That's cool. Okay. Um, so I do think this is a really good time for a Pomodoro break, and so I briefly gave you guys a heads up on what that looks like. And for the people who are just now becoming familiar with the show, we like to do a Pomodoro break sort of at the midpoint of the show, so that we can break up the monotony of thought, monotony of movement, and just and action, right? So what would you guys normally do in a situation in which you're just kind of, let's say you're getting writer's block, or you've been stuck at a computer for a long period of time? Like, what is something you would do to kind of break you out of that?
Personally, I would typically go for a walk. So in the dead of winter, like right now, I would walk on the treadmill. But usually I would try and get outside and get some sunlight. Um, but that's probably not very camera friendly. So one thing that Vincent and I like to do together is Wim Hof breathing.
Oh, nice.
Are you
Perfect.
familiar with Wim Hof?
Very familiar with it, but I would love to, if you could give an example of what that would look like and sound like, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Are you willing to do
Yeah,
this?
absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I would never have guessed we would do this for the camera. Okay, so basically, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna spend about a minute purging some CO2. So we're gonna take deep breaths and then expel CO2. And the goal is to end up with sort of as much oxygen, as little CO2 in the bloodstream as possible. And then we're gonna fully expel all that air. So basically, we're gonna get rid of all the extra oxygen in the lungs. And so what that means is the oxygen in the blood is the only oxygen we have, and basically the oxygen is going to drop and the CO2 is going to come up pretty rapidly. And this gives you an opportunity to basically control what is effectively a stress response. So, CO2 rising is going to create this physiological stress. But by basically controlling ourselves and being calm and at peace, it's a way to basically train yourself to control stress, from the top down. And actually, if you do it right, you can feel a pretty nice feeling, like just like this fairly intense peace. So that's our goal.
Okay, well, let's do it. Guide us through.
Sure. Okay. All right. I'm starting the timer, and we're gonna start breathing. One last deep breath. Expel.
Very good. Very good. What's cool about that, or there's a couple things, and this is what I love about the show. Even if it's just something that I like to geek out on, is the differences in how people do that, right? And so you explained it very well. But for the person that's listening um, and watching, what I like to do is I like to do nasal breathing, because this is what usually um, it brings about more of a deep breathing, right? And I like to control my inhale through my nose, and then I like to extend my exhale. And usually with the Wim Hof breathing, they call it fire breathing. There's a bunch of different ways to go about doing it, right? But there's usually a faster pace in doing that, with the goal of having a long inhale and then a very long exhale with a breath hold, right? And I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong, but it's like, if a person paused this and practiced that, doing that, to what you were saying, Zach, I think there is a really nice feeling that comes over you, and it's almost like this new clarity. And it's all about breath work. And breath work doesn't have to be where you're sitting with your legs crossed and your fingers are together and you're like rolling your eyes in your head. It doesn't have to be that. It certainly can be that, right? But there's a tool that I like to use. I've done some videos on this as well, called the relaxator. And it's this breath tool that you put in your mouth, forces nasal breathing, but then the exhale, it sort of puts a clamp on the water hose of the exhale, so that you can build up your lung capacity, because it's all about, having good lung capacity. And when you can breathe into this little small whistle like device, it builds up this pressure within your lungs, so that then breathing becomes sort of second nature. It becomes better just almost immediately. And the response that the body has, you build up nitric oxide, which dilates the blood vessels, which increases circulation. So there's all these things that you can do with simply breathing. Biohacking doesn't have to be expensive, but it can be. Right? Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, usually we do this with we do the exhale and then we hold the with so no air in the lungs, and basically you're going from that point of having a lot of oxygen to CO2 accumulating and oxygen depleting. And we'll usually hold for like a minute or a minute and a half or even 2 minutes sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a piece that comes on pretty quickly into that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometime soon, I'm going to have the founder of Hanu Health, Dr. Jay Wiles, and he's going to be on the show. And he measures HRV. He has a company that measures HRV really, really well. And I like to do it. They have a breath hold test in which you can kind of monitor everything. And I think I got up to, it was like my breath hold test is 90 seconds, and you measure that after a long exhale, right? So you do your long slow inhale, long exhale, and then a 90-second hold after that. It's intense, and people, if you don't practice it, it's like anything else. You build it up as you do it over time. And what's amazing about that is what it can do to your nervous system, right? It's easier to differentiate between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system response. And so when you have this challenge daily in your body, then when something stressful does happen, you almost automatically recall this ability to be able to calm yourself down. And that's what I love about doing that. So thanks for sharing that. It's really fun.
Yeah, for sure. That was fun. I really like that style. It like a way to shake up the podcast a little bit and give people a tool. So that's it's fun that you do that.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, so you had the Flow supplement, and now you have the Add to Coffee supplement. Because your company is called Lifestacks, let's kind of talk about what else you have to offer and sort of why you came up with it, and maybe what's on the horizon.
Sure. Yeah. So as you know, stacks are combinations in the supplement space. And then even more broadly than that, there are also habits that you put together. So it can be supplements and other sort of lifestyle techniques. In our case, it kind of has many different meanings. So you stack our product with coffee. It also itself is a supplement stack. And then, of course, it doesn't stop with what we're consuming. We also want to deploy that energy that we're getting from the product in meaningful ways in our life. So it's a pretty holistic sort of approach to consumption and well-being. So yeah, in terms of what's in the product, I'd love to share a little bit of detail about what we include in there and why. So basically, if you've seen energy drinks and read the label, you'll notice taurine is a pretty common ingredient. And usually people use like 2 to 3 grams of taurine alongside like a mega dose of caffeine. So, you'll get your 300 milligrams of caffeine and 2 grams of taurine. And the reason that pairing exists is that taurine basically calms the nervous system, and it actually even prevents seizures. And so when these companies are giving you like a shit ton of caffeine, they also want to give you something to make sure that you don't have a seizure. Now we use a way more modest dose, 500 milligrams of taurine. That's a more sort of physiologically appropriate amount of taurine. It's like consistent with the amount you'd find in like a pretty rich diet. And basically the goal there is to take your morning cup of coffee and to smooth it out a little bit. So less jitters and a longer arc of action of the caffeine. We use tyrosine, which is the amino acid precursor to dopamine. So having more tyrosine in your diet, and especially taken independent from other protein, lets you basically take that and make more dopamine and more epinephrine and norepinephrine. So the effect of that is just a little more willpower. Dopamine is this kind of neuromodulator that lets you, focus on goals that are not immediate. And so, and that's really what we're all doing, right? Our work days are about striving towards goals that have different sort of lengths of time over which they're applicable. So maybe you're building a company for next year, but you need motivation today. So that's where the tyrosine comes in. The next is ginseng. And specifically, we use a fermented ginseng that's more available and actually tastier. So ginseng usually tastes pretty bad, but we found one that's both sort of more potent and also doesn't taste bad. And that's called GS15-4 ginseng for those who want to look that up.
I haven't heard of that one, but you're right. Most of the time, people who've had like bona fide ginseng, it literally tastes like dirt because it's a root. It's a root, right? And so it tastes like it tastes exactly like that.
Yeah, you're right about that. So and then the next is citicoline. Citicoline is a choline precursor, or actually rather, it's a choline donor and an acetylcholine precursor. Acetylcholine is the learning neurotransmitter. And so basically by having higher levels of choline in your diet, you'll end up supporting the system that helps you learn and form memories. And actually that ingredient in particular has been studied for cognitive decline. It increases working memory and also mitigates decline. The next is rhodiola. That's the second adaptogen that we use. And rhodiola has been clinically studied for its anti-fatigue effects. So in one study, they took a group of doctors, put them on 100 milligrams of rhodiola, and measured outcomes over 6 to 8 weeks. And basically, the doctors on rhodiola performed much better, felt better, their mood was higher, they had more energy at the end of that study. And there's many others. It's a very well-studied herb. And then we've got uridine monophosphate. It's a dietary component. It's also a nucleotide base. And actually, that one is included in lots of nootropic stacks, but it's less well studied other than for safety. Of course, it's safe and it's found in the diet in high amounts, so no worries there. But we use it because anecdotally, it actually enhances the potency of caffeine. And then so it's like make your cup of coffee go further. Use less caffeine but get more stimulation. And then the final ingredient is huperzine, and huperzine is basically stops the breakdown of acetylcholine. So it basically keeps that learning neurotransmitter around. The effect is just a sharper mind and more wakefulness as well. So this stack together basically provides sustained energy. People notice like no afternoon slump. They can sometimes drink less coffee and feel just as good or even better. And then we love it for like work sessions and workouts. So really anything in your day where you want energy and motivation, the stack is really well designed for that.
Yeah, one of the things that comes to mind as a question, and I know how I would answer this, but I like to play sort of put myself in the shoes of the listener or the viewer. How would this work in terms of like a fasting mimicking diet or intermittent fasting protocol? Like, what would you suggest to someone who's curious about how that may affect their fasting protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'd note is that there's many different kinds of fasts. So fasting is really just abstention. And of course, you could abstain from everything. We certainly wouldn't suggest abstaining from water. And most people, don't find much reason to abstain from coffee, for example. It basically enhances the fat burning and metabolic health effects of a fast without really compromising any of those benefits. The only reason you might abstain from coffee, for example, is just if you're looking for a full digestive reset. So that's one reason to fast sometimes. You just want to take nothing in, you want to clean out the gut. But outside of that specific purpose of fasting, if you're more like most people, just looking for longevity benefits, health benefits, performance benefits, then certainly you'll have your coffee. And you can also have other fasting supporting supplements and nutrients. So in this case, we use MCT, which is a ketogenic fat. We use only 45 calories from MCT and from fiber. And just for your audience, 45 calories is about the amount you'd use if you walked for 10 minutes. So this amount of calories is not going to stop you from burning your own endogenous fat stores when you're fasting. That's still a key goal, and it's something that MCT is not going to help you, is not going to get in the way of. And so, yeah, basically, this stack gives you energy and supports those fat burning pathways, including ketosis, without compromising it. So for people that are having any trouble fasting, maybe it's hard to skip breakfast. It's just not a lifestyle they're used to. They snack a lot. They eat a lot of meals. Having something like this that keeps you full, keeps you energized, helps you from keeps you from thinking about food. It could be a great way to basically kickstart the fasting lifestyle.
Josh, if I could, one thing I would add here is that we think that the product really supports fasting in a modern context. Also, a lot of people report feeling tired or kind of deprived when they're fasting, and that's fairly inconvenient when you're going to the office and have to have a lot of stuff to get done and have a lot of meetings to get done. So we think that fasting isn't about feeling deprived, and the stack really helps with that. You can have a normal, productive, energized day while also abstaining from food.
Well said. Yeah, both of you, well said. And that, again, that's just kind of how I would address this as well, because I'm sure you can imagine I get this question all the time, right? Well, but this is not technically a fast. And then in my head, I'm like, well, but what is a fast, really? I mean, if we're consuming water, some people would say that's not a fast. But then you can go as extreme as I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Prolon by Walter Longo, but I really love the research behind what Prolon is doing. And it was actually the first time that I experienced what it's like to do a proper fast to bring up this autophagy, cellular cleansing, to be in deep ketosis and all these things while having food, right? And basically the idea there is to be able to get just beneath the point of nutrient sensing, right? So the nutrient sensing pathway, once that kicks in, then a whole host of other things start to kick in and your body does what it does, right? But if you can get just beneath that nutrient sensing pathway, then technically your body is in a fast, right? It may not be in a water fast like state, but what are the implications of doing that? Well, like you said, maybe not as much energy. It certainly puts a damper on your lifestyle, right? Like if you're out and about and you're not even having water, or you're only having water, it just makes it challenging, right? But if you can have soups and olives and little bitty crackers and things like that, it's one of those things that I've now suggested to all of my health coaching clients is to try Prolon. And so I would have to like check in with them to see how this would fit into that. And also at the same time, even if this doesn't fit into it, because they're really technical about like various herbs and things that might kick in that nutrient sensing pathway, but it's only 5 days, right? So if you get this product, this Lifestacks product, you just hang on to it for 5 days. If nothing else, you don't burn through your supplements, your product, right? So hold on to your product, and then once you finish, jump back into it. I think what you guys have built is great, and I certainly want to try it. Normally, like in the past, I would have been in a situation where I would have already tried your product. That way I could talk more about my results or how I feel on it. But when we wrap this up, I definitely plan on doing that and kind of seeing what it tastes like. What do you guys hear the most, I guess, in terms of anecdotal testimonials? What do you hear the most about your product?
The thing I think we hear the most is basically this like sustained energy. So people are really reporting there's no afternoon crash. Their cup of coffee lasts longer. And then often that means they don't have to go back for another cup of coffee. And then, sort of stepping back, my experience with in the consumer packaged goods space before this, the thing that you hear basically is taste is king. So, whatever the functional benefits are, people have to enjoy consuming it, or else basically they won't, no matter how healthy it is. And so as we were formulating this product, it was absolutely crucial for us to be able to deliver on taste. We're enhancing your cup of coffee in every way. That's not just the energy and the nutrient side of things. It's also the way that, you get to enjoy that cup. So we hear that a lot too. People really, really love the way it tastes.
One thing I'll add here is Zach and I have both been inspired by the Atomic Habits book, and really your habits are only as good as your ability to execute on them. So it's very important that the consumption experience is delightful and enjoyable, and that's really what we try to do with a sort of very delicious, almost decadently delicious morning drink.
Well, what I think is really cool about what's happening so far is that it's like you're ready. You know what I mean? Like you're prepped for another Shark Tank round. You know what I mean? Like I would never consider myself a shark, but I love how you are kind of touching on the various different topics, and I see why you guys work well together. I think this is amazing. The next question that comes to mind for me though is right now I see one SKU. I see one item in your cart. What's next on the horizon? What are you guys looking to next?
Sure. Yeah. So there's one product that is coming soon that we are comfortable mentioning. So basically, with fasting, as we've already talked about, there's certain things that you can use that help the benefits of the fast without actually compromising what you're going for in terms of metabolism and autophagy. And so often people consume electrolytes when they fast. And so we've had our eye on making electrolyte products with a stack of nutrients that supports all aspects of fasting, including energy, but also the metabolic benefits. So that's coming soon. We've been enjoying the beta versions of that stack. The energy that you're sensing from us is in part coming from that product right now.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, and I think like you guys are set up to, like with the name of the company, and you have a beautiful website. It's all amazing. I think you guys are set up to have, multiples and multiples and multiples of stacks in the future, which is really cool. And also, before we started recording, you were asking me about my blue tongue, and about methylene blue and things like that. I would love to sort of behind the scenes work with you guys on, some of the other things that you're talking about, because it's like I travel a lot, right? And I see that this probably travels very well, like this Lifestacks, the add to coffee product. And so I'm always looking for things that make my life easier to help keep me at, operating at a high performance. And this looks like something that would be easy to add to the mix. Um, what are some of the downsides though? Like, because it's easy for me to get on here and talk about all the upsides and how amazing the products are and things like that, but I don't want to be a person that only talks about the downsides. Like, are you guys seeing like any sort of negatives? Because I'm sure there's somebody out there who just either doesn't like the taste or it doesn't work for them. Can we talk through some of that?
Yeah, sure. I'll note first that one of our formulas is basically to create as much positive impact as possible while minimizing any kind of negative reports or side effects. And so, with many things, you get an immediate benefit, but there are long-term consequences. And, if you're going to shift our neurology really significantly, usually it's going to bounce back. So it's going to push back against you, and you're going to have a crash that follows the high. That's a pretty generic kind of report from a bunch of different substances that affect a bunch of different systems. But in this case, instead of like really aggressively pushing the system into a new state, we're just supporting it functionally with appropriate but not excessive amounts of different ingredients. So as we mentioned, that we've got a subtle effect on the dopamine system, a subtle effect on the cholinergic system. We've got this nice natural energy coming from adaptogens, but in none of those cases are we like really hammering the system and giving you a huge dose of something that you're going to crash from later. So in terms of those effects, we're not really seeing or hearing reports of cognitive side effects. Maybe the only place where we sometimes get a report is we've chosen to keep the net carbs in the product very low. We don't want to compromise the fast, so we're not using sugar or any sugar substitutes, and we're also not using any artificial flavors or artificial sweeteners like sucralose, for example. So we do use stevia, and some people find that stevia has an aftertaste. So that's the only thing that we sometimes hear negatively about the product. But in the future, actually, we are looking at many different stevia extracts that have different flavor profiles. So I think even that slight drawback for some folks is going to go away too.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. One of the things I just assumed that you would bring up um, is this idea of gut distress when it comes to using MCT. And I know not everyone experiences it, but people do experience gut distress from having MCTs, especially if they aren't fat adapted. So, do you have any experience in that, or has it been all good for you guys?
Yeah, we use a pretty reasonable dose of MCT. So anytime you're sort of looking at like gut distress with MCT, the recommendation is always to start at an appropriate level and then titrate up from there. So we use 6 grams of Go MCT, which is MCT oil. It's C8 and C10 that is bound or carried on acacia fiber. So basically, at the same time that you're getting this fairly novel oil, it's bound to a fiber that is soothing for the gut, and at a reasonable dose. So people aren't actually reporting any gastric distress with the product. If your listeners are going to go and buy like some MCT oil and take a tablespoon of that in their coffee, then they might have some problems. So we recommend starting at a reasonable dose.
Yeah, definitely. I was pretty in tune with the trend of MCT, like with the advent of bulletproof diet and all that stuff. And I obviously experienced a lot of that, which is why I asked. um, and then there was a few companies that came out. I actually had the founder of Bub's Naturals on my show, and that was among one of the first companies that introduced to me the powdered form of MCT. And I was like, oh, this is cool because you can now get the benefits of MCTs, which is medium chain triglycerides for those who are asking. And it's most commonly from coconut oil, but the coconut oil has different chains, and you can extract different versions of it, like Zach mentioned. But when I started using that, like I didn't have any issues, right? Because let's face it, when you use the oil, it's easy to have too much, right? Especially if you don't want to sit there and measure it, because I eyeball everything, right? And so it's easy to kind of get carried away when you use the oil. But when you have a powder, it's a little bit easier to manage, and it's easier to travel with, right? So that's why I love that you guys have that as kind of one of your main staples. And MCT, like I just finished reading this book called Ketones, the Fourth Fuel, and there was a lot of talk about MCTs being a benefit along with MCT oils now, or along with ketones. Now, some companies, I don't know if you guys are well versed in ketones or not, but some companies say to take those separately because of that whole gut distress situation. But if you have both in your diet, they can be very, very good for you. So do you guys do much with ketones? Have you researched it at all?
We've looked into some companies that are doing that sort of stuff. We haven't thought to include any sort of ketones in our stacks yet. Most of that's around format and flavor and all that. But it's something we might do in the future.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the first things I thought of when you started telling me about your flow supplement, the capsule. The one of the first things that came to mind when you said you had like 11 different ingredients, I thought cost. I was like, cha-ching, 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 right? Because
Yeah.
and that's also the thing about ketones. It's so sort of new-ish in the market that it's still pretty expensive. And so it's why we don't see too many companies doing it. Right now, I can think of about 5 companies that are really doing good products when it comes to ketone supplementation. But it would be cool to see kind of what you guys are thinking about in the future with that, because it is right up your alley in terms of stacking and cognitive ability and performance and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
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 Go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say, like, is there anything else that that you would like to go over? Because I mean, I know you guys can talk in depth about this Add to Coffee supplement product that you have, but I want to make sure before we start wrapping up, like that you guys get a chance to talk about what you really want to get out there and you want people to know.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, well, I guess the first thing I'd say is we're doing a try before you buy it offer on the website. So we know that people just love the product when they try it. So we want to make it really easy for folks to try. So we'll ship it to you for free, and then if you like it, you keep it and pay. But if you don't, then we never charge you. And people are liking that model because people want to try it, and so this is a risk-free way to do it. But overall, actually, one thing I'd say we don't you don't typically hear people talk about their brands or the thinking behind their brand, because it's kind of like all that stuff is behind closed doors, right? That's like boardroom conversations, and then you go and only show the customer a little bit about what you're doing and the part you want them to see. But in this case, Vincent and I are really going about this honestly. So our goal is really to care for the customer. We want to be the customer ourselves. We want our family to benefit from what we're doing. And so everything we do because we believe it's of value to the customer. So we use, as you mentioned, expensive ingredients and many of them. And that's because these are the things we want to take, and the people we care about, we want them taking them too. And then I would also say, sort of paired with that customer care, there is also a deep striving for knowledge. So it would be relatively easy for us to give you, excessive dose of something that makes you feel really good immediately, but then has long-term harm. But we never do that. We are really trying to use basically knowledge about how human physiology works to do things that support the physiology, and rather than pull levers too extremely. So we really want to play a balanced role in the life of the customer, and we do that with science.
Smart. Okay.
One thing, Joshua, one thing I would add here is that we're also not really interested in, fasting as a fad or any other sort of health fads. We want to support, health and performance in ways that are actually truly in line with our physiology, as Zach said. So we don't consider fasting as a fad. We think that it's here to stay because it's in line with our evolutionary past. Also, we're meant to fast and to feast. And so that's why fasting is important to us. We don't think it's a fad. It's here to stay. And pretty much all of our formulations are in line with things that are really true about our physiology.
Yeah, I love that. There was a quote that I was reading this morning from Hippocrates about exactly what you just mentioned. What is it called? Let me see if I can find this because I think this is a really cool quote, and it was within that book that I was telling you about. It basically goes like this. Um, to eat when you are sick is to feed your illness, right? And it's a little bit longer than that, right? There's a longer quote. I think it's basically, oh, here it goes. Everyone has a doctor in him or her. We just have to help in its work. The natural healing force within each one of us is the greatest force in getting well. Our food should be our medicine. Our medicine should be our food. But to eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness.
Mm.
Pretty
Mm.
deep. It's pretty
Yeah.
deep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So well said, Vincent, because I agree with you. I think um, it it kind of goes back full circle to what I mentioned before about everyone's looking for that magic bullet, but that magic bullet might be fasting, right? Or at least intermittently fasting. And that's not the bullet that people want though. People, it's like they know about it, they learn about it, they hear about it, but implementing it is actually way more tedious than it might be worth the outcomes to people's minds, right? They think, oh, like I can't go without food. It's like, well, what would happen if, heaven forbid, another pandemic happened and the grocery stores are closed, right? Then what? You have to rely on the all this extra food within our bodies, because I always say, if you have any unwanted body fat on your body, then you obviously have an opportunity to do what's called internal feeding, and that's fasting, right? But
Yep.
if you don't ever access that, oh, it's gonna be tough. So I would just encourage people to try fasting out. I'm fasted right now. It's 2:13 in the afternoon, and I woke up at 6 a.m. and I haven't eaten a thing. I have had ketones though, and I have had a workout, and I have had methylene blue, right? So, but like none of these things kick me out of my fasting. And I could go the rest of the day. This is one of the benefits of having something like your add to coffee product, or having ketones, or maybe both. And so I just want to encourage people to kind of to key in on this important point. If you take nothing else away from this, think about that quote I just mentioned, and maybe try some of Lifestacks supplements.
Yeah, love all that. You're totally right. This idea of internal feeding, it's like you can get your calories from food, or you can use the stored calories you have in your body. And if you never use the stored calories on your body, then you're just going to keep well, at least you're going to keep that fat, and you're going to keep adding to it probably. So it's we think of it really like a seesaw in terms of energy balance. Where are your calories coming from? Are you using the calories you already have? Or are you bringing more in? And so fasting is a great way basically to structure your life so that you're at least sometimes burning your fat stores.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, this is where we kind of get to the end of the show, where I like to ask a couple fun questions that may have nothing to do with your industry, your product, your company, or maybe it does. But this is a question for each of you. What is a top pet peeve of yours?
Do you have one in mind?
It's a funny, Josh. Well, okay, I'll say this one. I travel a lot, as you do, Josh, and I absolutely hate just not getting enough fluids when I'm on the airplane. I get these small little cups of coffee or small little cups of water, and then have to chase down the the flight attendants for more water down the aisle. So that's a bit of a pet peeve. It's a sort of a first world problem, I suppose, but I really I'm eager to get my fluids in, and also my steps in actually on the flight, and so I tend to get quite annoyed when I don't get enough fluid.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I'm sure you realize that's by design, right? They make sure you don't have enough water. That way you spend $8 on a bottle of water that normally costs, $2 or whatever, right? They get me every time.
Dehydrate you
Every time.
with peanuts.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like or they offer crackers. I have a gluten intolerance, right? So it's like I can have nothing on the flight, and which is okay because I practice intermittent fasting anyway. So I'll either take like olives or something like that's kind of in line with what I normally eat. And but I try my best not to have to spend the money. But it's so funny when the flight attendants come by me multiple times and they think that like something's wrong with me because they'll be like, oh, like they just hand me these peanuts and these crackers and these whatever. I'm like, oh, no, thank you. Because normally I'm listening to a podcast or something. And I take off my headphones kind of like very abruptly, like, no, thank you. And then I go back to my thing. And then they come back time and time again. And they're like, are you sure you don't want anything? And I finally say to them, like, look, I have a gluten allergy. I can't really have anything that you're offering, but thank you. And they're like, oh, well, why didn't you order a gluten-free meal? I'm like, well, because even that's crap, because it's like full of crap.
Your whole system's flawed.
Right, the whole system's flawed. Exactly.
Josh, you're talking to the right guy here. I have the exact same experience because I'm gluten free as well, and I'm having the same interactions on the airplane too.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Okay, Zach, what is one of your pet peeves?
Yeah, mine's a little slightly different scale than this one about the flights. There's this popular phrase about like everybody's entitled to their opinion. And I guess I think opinion in this case is what's called a suitcase word, where there's actually a few different things being thrown in there. I think we should tease out preference from belief. And we should recognize that belief is not the same thing as truth, although it pertains to it. So let me just I'll go through this very quickly. Everybody's entitled to their preferences because preferences aren't things that are derived. They're not up for sort of like they're not a conclusion of something. They're something that you have naturally, just like everybody's entitled to their fingers and their organs. And it's not to say preferences don't change or evolve, but it just means that they're not given by the truth. They are the truth about you. Now, when it comes to beliefs, surely everybody is entitled to their beliefs, but they're not entitled to those beliefs being true. I think there is only one truth. There are no contradictions that are simultaneously true in the universe. And so really, I think you're entitled to your beliefs, and you're also susceptible to being wrong about your beliefs. And really, our goal should be to align our beliefs with that ultimate deep truth. And if we manage to do that, then all of us are actually going to be on the same page. We might have different preferences, but we would share the same beliefs.
And that, my friend, is very evolved of you, especially at your young age. And I imagine that those mind-altering substances you talked about in the beginning is probably had something to do with that. Maybe not, but I certainly agree with you. And I think I had some of the most profound thoughts like that when I was in a journey, right? Let's just say that, or on a journey. And I feel like we all are on a journey, but when you can kind of understand that we are all one and that everything affects everything, then it just kind of allows you to think a little differently, So well said on that. Well said. Okay, for my next question, this one's also a fun one, probably my favorite of the show. What is something you're most grateful for? And I'm really curious about what you guys have to say, mostly because you're young, and I want to, I imagine you guys practice gratitude. So I would like to know what's something you're most grateful for.
Yes, I can key it up. I can go for it if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right. Great. I love our time in history, actually. I think, is that what you're going to say? That's very funny. So, there's a good amount of like concern and complaining about the state of the world at this point. And, that's all, it's valid to be sort of existentially nervous at this point, because there's a lot of risks that could compromise the future of humanity. But I think this is basically this is the best way a late stage civilization could look as it faces these risks. We're actually a very cooperative species. That's how we managed to scale in the first place. We are quite empathetic. we can get along quite well, and we're full of insight and pursuit. And I think basically it means we've got an opportunity to actually and usher into a great era of humanity. And at this point, I think we've got it. If we've got lucky enough situations, then we got a lot of freedom to explore ourselves and explore the world. So I think despite all these sort of dire messages that we're hearing,
Yeah, that cut out for a second. Gordon, were you able to catch all that?
It caught a little at the end there.
Yeah, it cut out a little bit at the end, but I do get the gist of what you were saying, and I certainly appreciate that, and I agree. The other side of it, if I were to steel man that comment, would be that that's a very first world privileged perspective, right? And again, I think about, like, I've been to Africa, I've been to third world countries and things like that, and to your point, like, the world is dire, right, to them, and a person's worst experience is their worst experience, right? And so so there's a little bit there, but I love where you're thinking, like, and how you're thinking about it. I do love that, and I agree that we have an opportunity to do what we're doing right now. You guys are in Chicago, I'm in New York, Gordon's in who knows where, he's in internet land, right? And we're able to have this conversation and be able to talk about these things to change. And you guys are our future, really. You know what I mean? You guys represent our future. And so to be able to hear you talk at this level is really cool. Really, really cool. Vincent, what is something you're most grateful for?
Yeah, well, I was going to say the same thing as Zach just did. So I'll second what he said, but maybe relatedly, this, life is fleeting, and it's brief. Really, no matter how many decades you get. And I am trying to sort of like cultivate an abundance mentality when it comes to life. Also, there is a lot of opportunity and there's a lot happening, and so I try to cultivate an attitude of gratitude to those immediately around me. So I'm very grateful for my family and the opportunity that they've given me, and also for the friendship that I have with Zach. So life is short, and it's sort of existentially dreadful in a lot of ways, but it serves to cultivate an abundance mentality for the opportunities that lie ahead, and I'm certainly trying to do that. And I think that's inducing more gratitude to those around me also.
Beautiful. All right, gentlemen. What is and obviously Gordon is going to list all of the websites and the socials and things like that. But for those that are listening and watching, could you let people know the best ways to find out more about what you guys are doing, what's on the horizon, your socials, all of that stuff?
Yeah, sure thing. We're at lifestacks.com. That's STACKS, STACKS.com. And there you'll find that try before you buy it offer that I mentioned. And we are on social, Lifestacks_performance. But personally, actually, Vincent and I are focused on the business and focused on the here and now and our priorities. And so we're not very active ourselves on social media.
So you mean there's no TikTok? What?
No TikTok.
What?
I only just saw TikTok for the first time last week because I was looking at it as a potential channel for Lifestacks to publicize ourselves. And so I downloaded the app for the first time and scrolled a little bit. And frankly, it wasn't for me, but I hear it's pretty addictive for a lot of people.
It's for goldfish.
Yeah.
It's effective.
Yeah,
Being honest.
and lots of people would argue that it's Chinese spyware and whatnot. Like I have it, I use it, but it's an afterthought. And well, Gordon kills it. He's crushing it with our podcast. So
Post and drop. That's my mentality. You just post and drop. I don't
post and drop.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. All right, guys. Well, thanks for your time, and continue doing great things. I'll try to keep up as best I can with what you guys are doing. For anybody that's curious about trying their stuff, as you heard it, you can go and try before you buy. I'm looking at the website now, and it's showing that there's a little red bar that shows try before you buy. Why not take advantage of that? And then if you've got comments, feedback for me or for these guys, feel free to share. You can drop it in the show notes or in the comment section, or maybe chat with them, hit them up. And yeah, that's it. So thanks for your time. To the listeners, to the viewers, peace.
Simply walk the talk.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen.